Welcome to Optily Radio, your regular 30-minute dose of everything you need to accelerate your e-commerce marketing success.
Hi, my name is Nina White, and I'm a digital marketing strategist and the content specialist here at Optily. And I'll also be your host for Optily Radio, Accelerate E-commerce Marketing. At Optily, we're all about skipping the BS and getting right to the point, helping you grow your online store through digital marketing. Our new SaaS platform helps you optimize your ad campaigns instantly across the Google and Facebook ad networks, giving you more time to focus on the fun stuff, not figuring out attribution with a million spreadsheets. Try it out for 2 weeks free at optily.com. And we all know it's pretty much impossible to run any business, especially an e-commerce one, without optimizing for Google. Even if you're just starting out with your online store, you know how quickly things can change on Google, from how your website appears in the search results to how your data comes through on analytics. In this episode of Optily Radio, we'll chat with two Google pros who will take you through some of the recent changes and look to the future to help us all prepare for what's to come. I'm happy to introduce to you today's guest, Barry Schwartz. Barry is the founder of Search Engine Roundtable, news editor for Search Engine Land, and CEO of Rusty Brick, a web service firm specializing in customized online technology based out of New York. He's worked in search for almost 2 decades and has spoken, moderated, and coordinated at many a search marketing conference. In 2019, Barry won the Outstanding Community Service Award from Search Engine Land, and in 2018, the U.S. Search Personality of the Year Award from the U.S. Search Awards. And joining the conversation from the Optily team, we have our digital product manager and resident Google Guy Randall Glick. Randall's worked in digital for over 20 years with agencies, corporates, and startups, and has been on both sides of the client-supplier relationship. He's also a lecturer in digital marketing, having provided content for programs at various institutions, including local colleges here in Ireland, TU Dublin, and UCD, along with Boston College in the States. So, very happy to have you on the show. Welcome, Barry and Randall.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So hopefully the weather's warming up everywhere a little bit as the springtime comes in. And, you know, I hear you're back in the office there, Barry, after getting your second vaccine.
Yes. It's good to be back here.
Yeah.
I used to come every day, but only for like an hour or so. And now to be back full time is nice. So
yeah. Different four walls.
Else gets back. Sorry?
A different 4 walls to look at. I would, really look forward to going back.
Yeah, for sure.
Super. So to get started, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, a little background about your company, and just short overview about how things have been in the past year that I'm sure has been crazy all around.
Sure. So I'm Barry Schwartz, as you said. Been doing the internet web thing since, I guess, the 90s, since I was actually in high school. My brother and I started this company called Rusty Brick while we were in high school. We made a business out of it. In college, we hired our first employee, and then now we have about a dozen or plus software developers working with us to build software. My company is called Rusty Brick, which is kind of the alias I went under or go under on Twitter and a bunch of other forums back in the old days, meaning like late 90s, early 2000s. You wouldn't really use your real name on the internet. You would just use like some alias. And so I used my company name and kind of stuck. And it's unique. And it's very easy to rank for back then. Anything was easy to rank for, but Rusty Brick is not something that people search for. But now they do, right? So we specialize in building out software, mobile and web software. We're based in New York, and like you said, today is the first day we came back to the office. We left. My last day in the office was March 11th, 2020. And I actually recorded a video. I do like these vlogs with other SEO and SEM personalities. And I remember recording a video right here with that person in my office, and we're like sanitizing and stuff. It was very interesting to look back at that and be like, how the year has gone. But obviously we're in a unique opportunity. People working in digital, um, we are very lucky. We're fortunate to be able to work technically from wherever we are. Obviously, it's changed some things, but we're not like we have to like go into an office, see patients. We're not like dentists where we have to work with people with their mouths open. So we're very lucky. So yeah, I can't complain.
Super. Well, yeah, it's definitely been an interesting year for sure. And even here at Optily, I mean, we've been launching in the middle of the pandemic. And I mean, I have never even met Randall in person. So, like, it's just really interesting just working remotely. But it's great that we've had the opportunity to do so. So let's get into some of the interesting Google questions we have. So the big news of the past month seems to be the announcement about the third-party cookies and Chrome. So what are your thoughts on that?
So the whole FLoC announcement, I don't know what specific thoughts I have about it. I mean, Google specifically said that, they've been leading up to this for a long time, that basically they're going to drop, third-party cookies. We're not going to track you across the web like that. Instead, we're coming up with this new AI machine learning based system called FLoC, which is like federated learning of cohorts. And it basically is their way of saying, without us tracking you, we're able to still know what you want somehow because we're magic and we're magical. And Google has that advantage because they could track you across their own first-party cookies, their own, their own, websites, and they have complete dominant control over that, whereas a smaller ad network doesn't. So obviously, I think these third-party cookies versus first-party cookies really benefit like companies like Google and Facebook. I know the electronic EF, electronic, I think EF, something like that, Frontier, like a privacy organization,
Yep.
was like really like, this is not a good thing. They are not happy with what Google's doing, although they'll probably never be happy with whatever Google does. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's rolling out soon or rolling out now. We'll see how it impacts advertisers. We just posted on Search Engine Land an article really explaining all this stuff. George from Search Engine Land posted it just this morning, which is March 15th, I'm sorry. So if you really want to know more about it and how it works, take a look at that article. It's pretty detailed.
Great. And do you think that maybe, that's like what you just said about EFF, do you see maybe that Microsoft will be a destination in the future because of concerns about privacy like this?
Right. So it's interesting. So Microsoft, well, that was the Australian thing, basically saying, yeah, in Australia you can use us. We'll pay publishers and so forth. So that's the other news that's coming out about like, are you gonna, we want your money if you want to go ahead and include our our snippets in your search results, both news and just general search results. And Microsoft's like, sure, we'll pay you because that's our only way of getting market share, I guess, because they've been trying to get market share for how many years?
Ever.
I honestly really thought Microsoft would be way ahead. I mean, I wrote a blog post back when Microsoft first launched their search engine. I think it was called like Live, or even before that, MSN Search. I'm like, oh, Google screwed, because they back then they owned IE and everybody was on Internet Explorer. Then Google's like, we need to get Chrome, we need to do Android, we need to do all these things to kind of bring people and control people and make sure they're using us for search. But Microsoft, back then you couldn't compare MSN Search to Google. It was just like, light years. And even now, it's even though they're somewhat close, they're not. And now it's much harder to leave, and that's all the antitrust stuff going on right now. How it's hard to leave Google. Google says it's easy, you just go to a different browser, but yet Google's paying Apple billions of dollars per year to be the default search engine. There's some logic there. It must be hard to change a default search provider if Google's willing to pay billions of dollars to become that default search provider.
You, Randall, do you have any thoughts? I know we
quoted
you.
It's not necessarily about the default one. It's changing user behavior more than anything else. Back in the day when Google was relatively new, I was very much a Yahoo head because I was into marketing at the stage, and I moved to Google mainly because it was quick, it was easy, it provided the results I needed. I keep on jumping back and forth between other search engines, mainly because obviously, my role is geared more towards search than anything else. But even with Microsoft and their Search Alliance back, almost a decade ago at this stage, to be able to take on the megalith that was Google, just never ended up changing anything else. You saw Yahoo and Microsoft sort of cannibalizing each other, but Google keep on staying strong. So the whole point was that once Google actually got people used to using their search engine, that's why it became hard, I think. They keep on delivering results, and it's really the majority of people that are deep into research that start looking in and trying to see whether or not they're actually trustworthy results or anything else. So they're capitalizing on the lemming mentality, I think, more than anything else. People don't want to change because they're very familiar with what they're used to.
Mm-hmm. It's really true. And I mean, it is definitely hard to switch browsers. Just, I mean, as a user, longtime user of Chrome myself, it's just, they have my passwords. I'm not going to remember all of those. So it's just really hard to go onto a different browser. It's like, what was this password? What was that password? It's like, it's so convenient, and they do make it hard to switch. So, but yeah, definitely interesting to hear about all of these changes. So you mentioned the featured snippets and Australia a little bit there, Barry. So, I remember you had posted very recently about some volatility with the Google featured snippets, that they kind of went down in terms of visibility. But it's just been an interesting topic overall, the featured snippets, just in terms of content providers. Sometimes, not being too happy with people searching, for a direct answer to their question, having Google just pop it up on the search engine results page, and people would just be like, oh, okay, that is the capital of Bolivia. I don't even have to click into this page. I don't have to do anything. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of, Google's goal is to answer people's questions, but content providers' goal is to get people to click into their page, interact with other content on the page. There's CTA, other things there, especially in e-commerce. What do you think about, just general featured snippets?
So on that news, February 18th, 19th, Google seemed to have drastically reduced the number of featured snippets, the position 0, as some people call, from showing up in the search results. As of last Friday, they're all back. So I think it was a bug. It was a 3-week bug. I think Google didn't confirm anything, but I'm pretty sure that was a bug. I initially thought it was a bug because featured snippets are Google's, that's what Google wants. So I would be surprised, but you never know with Google. 2, when it launched, the feature snippets were kind of like direct answers. They didn't really have links to publishers as much. When they first launched, it was like hidden. You couldn't really click on it to go somewhere. It would just show you the answer, and it scraped it from some third-party website. But that's in a lot of traffic now. It's not like it was. It's much. They really heard publishers and said, all right, we're going to make sure the link's prominent and easy to use. Then the issue around after they added the link was, feature snippets often come up when you do voice search. So you ask your Google Assistant or device to say, what is the capital of New York? And it will tell you, and then it will only say as source from xyz.com. Nobody's going to click on it. You're not going to get traffic for it, but voice search has not panned out to be that much of a concern for most publishers. At least we don't know if it is, because Google doesn't really show us the data. So we don't know, nor does Google show us data on featured snippets, which drives me insane. Why not have in Google Search Console's performance report how much of my traffic is coming from featured snippets, how much of it is voice enabled? Why not provide it? Google says it's not actionable. I think it is actionable, but Google's like, tell me why. And we've been fighting about this forever. Not only that, Google I saw a screenshot of Google actually testing it, the filter for feature snippets. Show me feature snippet traffic. So they had it there. They was live at some point for some people. They just removed it for some reason. It's something Google could provide, and why they're not providing it kind of makes you question, what's the benefit for publishers? Is there something negative that Google's trying to hide, and so forth? But ultimately, when a publisher tends to lose a feature snippet, they tend to be upset, and they tend to want that feature snippet back. So ultimately, I think in the long run, most people feel like most SEOs or publishers do want that feature snippet. So complaining about it is something that, we complain about everything, us SEOs. So they take it, they give it. We're never happy. So ultimately, I think the goal for any publisher is to win that feature snippet, especially if they're not in the first result anyway. If they're in the position 3 or position 4, they could get that feature snippet even if their content doesn't rank as high.
Great. So what are some currently accepted practices in search and SEO that you think will be outdated or will become bad practices because of some, upcoming algorithm updates?
I mean, historically, we've seen these things change over the years. I could go on the content side. It was more around, like in the old days, pre-Panda. I guess pre-2012, 11.
And what is Panda for some of our listeners who might not know?
It's this an animal that you could find in the woods sometimes. And if you see one, you should run really fast and run far, far away. It's basically an algorithm update that was basically they named it Panda after one of the people who wrote it was Pandau. And it's basically an algorithm that kind of says, is this content great or not? Of course, that's subjective, but they came up with an algorithm to do that. And a lot of long tail, like what SEOs did in the old time, were basically, I'm going to target the keyword big blue pineapple chair. And nobody searches for that except for somebody looking for a big blue pineapple chair. But Google would rank it because it's a very long tail keyword, and you can have a little piece of content that describes it and rank very well for it. And they would create tons of variations: yellow big blue pineapple chair, yellow not so big blue pineapple chair, all these variations, and create thousands of pages, tiny little variations, and then rank for all these types of keywords. Google's like, we're on to you, no more of that. We're going to go ahead and try to rank the higher level version of that keyword with much more richer content and depth content. So now SEOs focus more on more deep content and so forth, which is kind of funny and somewhat ironic because Google then takes your content and then will take out the little snippet that it thinks it's useful and make it a feature snippet so that the user doesn't have to read your content. They can just read the snippet of the content because users don't like to read. People don't like to read. Google's like, write all this content for us. We only will rank the really long content, but we're going to show users just a snippet of it because we know that's what they really want. So I find that to be somewhat ironic. But again, on the content side, it's more about building deeper, more engaging content that people won't read.
So writing for humans, not for robots.
Right, but the humans probably won't want to read it anyway. So it's kind of like funny. On the link side, it depends on how far you want to go back. Obviously, even before Penguin, there was reciprocal linking. Like, I'll link to you if you link to me. I even had one link builder come to my office and say, let's do some type of triangle linking thing. I'm like, why? I'm like, well, that's how you do links because Google won't catch it if it's a 3-way link versus a 2-way link. All these types of link strategies, infographics, widget links, all this stuff that used to be okay. Even paying people to link to you used to be okay. I mean, it was something, pre-no follow attribute. Used to stick a no follow attribute to tell Google not to follow it. I had links on my website that were labeled sponsor links in text. And then Google came out with a no follow attribute and said, no longer should you just title the links sponsored. You have to go ahead and tell us they're no followed by adding an HTML attribute to that link. So linking has changed drastically over the years. Of course, Penguin kind of like cracked down a lot of this stuff automatically. And then Google's algorithms were like, all right, we're no longer going to go ahead and penalize the links. We're just going to go ahead and not count them, which kind of feels like a penalty, but it's not a penalty. I'm not going to go into the weeds on that. So links have changed, and nobody really does link building anymore. They do content marketing, or they do outreach, or whatever it might be, but they're still link building. And then on the meta side, like the metadata side, you have like meta keywords that are never used. Maybe Bing uses it. Meta news keywords, stock ticker symbols for the news, and all that type of stuff. Rel Next Prev, no longer around. Big surprise to SEOs. Authorship, which is important, but the Rel Next Prev was very important for e-commerce sites. How do you handle paginated category landing pages and stuff like that, and tell Google this is sort of a set, and how they consolidate those signals, and now maybe use canonical tags instead. So a lot of things have changed over the years, and of course, like mobile versus desktop. Mobile first indexing is March now. If you're not on mobile first indexing, everything's going to burn down, and your whole website's going to just blow up into smithereens. It's not going to be there anymore. I'm not sure how sarcastic I should be because I'm not, but
Sarcasm works.
So Randall could then go ahead and like explain it to the audience, like what I mean by all that. But that's kind of like the sections I would have, like content changes, link changes, and then general like meta HTML markup changes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's just more hoops to jump through now than there used to be.
Yes. SEO is more competitive these days. There's a lot more websites on the internet these days. Those people building websites are much smarter. The platforms they're using are out of the box, search engine friendly. It used to be like you build an e-commerce site. The packages had session IDs in there. They were all the same URL. Google couldn't crawl the website. They had no idea what to do with it. Now it's like every website's easily indexable, crawlable. Now it's more about building out better content that people want to link to and stuff like that. So it's a different challenge than it was years ago.
Yeah, I see that you posted a poll that 60% of SEO marketers say that SEO in general is harder now than it was 5 years ago. And I assume that's a lot of why it's harder now.
Yeah, I'm wondering which other, like there was like 15 or 20% said that it was easier. I mean, I guess if you first got into SEO 5 years ago and you knew nothing about it, yeah, I'm sure it's easier. But in general, SEO is, nobody would argue that SEO is, for an experienced SEO is harder today in terms of seeing performance than 10, 15 years ago.
Is that, obviously the algorithms and everything have changed, but there's also just more websites out there, and there's more older, well-established websites with more content that a new company now would have to break through. Is that also a factor?
So, yeah, besides for the being more competition and more content and trying to compete is much, much harder these days, it's also the algorithm is much smarter. I mean, if I wanted to rank for any keyword back in early 2000s, I just create one pager and just throw a lot of links to it, and I can rank for anything I wanted to. Even the most competitive stuff, you name it, I could have ranked for anything back in the day with almost zero effort. Now it's much, much harder because the algorithm is much smarter.
Yep. And Rand, do you have any comments on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of funny that when it comes down to Google, is they say write for humans and the search engine will understand it, but I think we've been writing for the search engine algorithm more than for humans. As Barry was saying before, humans tend to take things in condensable chunks and understand a lot of the relationship, but Google always wanted us to write more content to be able to explain it all. And I think we were just training their AI. And we've been doing things for the last 20 years. We've been doing things the way Google wants us to do things. We build pages that'll be faster. We do things that are going into it. And the altruistic motives behind it is that people want that. And it's true. I mean, let's be fair here. It's like, people want to be able to get the answer right now. But I mean, my mom always taught me, it's like, if I have a question, go look it up. You learned more by being able to do your research yourself, and just giving a free answer and an easy answer. So we'll just go back to being able to display the stuff and feature snippets, and not being able to have the context behind it. Is we're giving the free answer away too quickly. Google's not providing that maturity that searchers need to have. That's why I call it. I keep on relaying it to the lemming effect, but yeah, I've been doing search and SEO and technical SEO, and that's one of the things that technical SEO brought me into, was you needed to analyze anything. You took a look at the website and something made you go, I wonder, and then you did research and you tried to be able to dig into it, and you found out, yeah, this actually did have an impact. That's where a lot of the redirect loops and finding lots of different websites that end up redirecting to one page, to another page, to another page, to another page, and then they wonder why they're not actually showing up in search results, because no one really knows what the final page is going to be at the end of the redirect. There's lots of different things going in as far as what to do and what not to do, and I suppose that's the question that we were looking at there. To focus on, and it's about making sure that you actually provide a good user experience, and hope that entities like Google won't take that away by presenting the answer too soon, and allow them to be able to interact with your website. The one benefit, though, about being able to have that featured snippet and have your brand there, and you actually do end up becoming known for the right answers, because if Google takes the response from your site other than Wikipedia's, then you're evidently, you actually are acknowledged as being a good value, which is why featured snippet is still something that people want to look for.
And definitely in terms of like sort of future of search, like long-term 5-10 years down the road, especially as, everyone's getting their Siris and Alexas, that, zero position, as you mentioned, Barry, that's going to be really key, just because there's no scrolling with Alexa. There's no, especially for e-commerce, you want a pair of, shoes, Nike shoes, whoever's selling those. That's number one. You're probably not going to spend too much time searching with a voice assistant. So that's sort of leads me into my next section about, the long-term future of search. Where do you see the trends going in the next 5 to 10 years? Sort of a little bit of futurism here, especially in terms of e-commerce.
Yeah, it's always hard to say 5 to 10 years, but yeah. So people thought that people would be buying more off of these desktop assistant devices. So you have your Alexa, you have your Google Assistant, you have your HomePod sitting on your desk, or maybe it's integrated into your fridge. My printer, when I run low on toner, it automatically sends a signal to Amazon to buy more ink, which is cool. You could do the same thing. You're sitting in your bathroom and you have that smart mirror, your vanity mirror that tells you the weather and tells you if you look pretty for the day. You could say, any more toilet paper, and maybe toilet paper comes out. But now that we have getting our vaccines with the 5G implanted in it, it could just detect and figure out what we need and automatically send signals to our favorite e-commerce sites to buy stuff. Ultimately, it's all about, like you see with Google Discover, and it used to be called Google Now. It's basically Google wants to predict before you know what you know, that you know what you need, to tell you this is what you're going to ask for before you ask for it. Sometimes that's based on your toner running low, or your roll of toilet paper thing and it sees that it's towards the end, or maybe it's based on a number of searches you've done in the past X minutes or past X days, and it knows that you want to buy this car. It might go ahead and say, oh, we found a great deal for you. It really depends. And I think a lot of that has to do with you having to feed Google that data through structured markup and Google Shopping, which is now free, and stuff like that. So Google has your data, constantly has that information. And there's a reason why Google kind of wants this information, in order for them to feed it to their searcher, either before they ask for it or when they ask for it. So ultimately, I think search is going to be less about search, but more about Google anticipating what you might search for in the future. But I don't know for sure. I thought that would be here today, and it kind of is with Google Discover. Sometimes Google Discover even gives you like, oh, this is a great price on this product that you were looking for. But I think it's just going to get more and more integrated into yourself because of the whole vaccine.
Yeah, I definitely mentioned on the last episode with our CEO, just how sometimes when you log on to like a social media platform, it seems like they're reading your mind in terms of what products they think you want. So to a point, we are getting there, but then we kind of go back and it's the whole data and privacy kind of, you get creeped out a little bit when you're like, I was just thinking about buying a new pair of boots, and all of a sudden Facebook's showing you that pair of boots and you're like, whoa, I did not search for those. So it'll be interesting to see how the big guys sort of balance the privacy aspect with sort of the preempting people's needs, because sometimes you just do see something, you're like, okay, that's kind of creepy, but I do really like those boots.
We'll see how the whole first party, third party cookie stuff impacts that as well. So we'll see.
As you said before, it's like Google's been talking about privacy, didn't talk about cookies and talking about alternatives, and like GA4, when it actually grows up and becomes a real analytics platform, it's doing exactly what we need it to do, and that's to track how people are interacting with site and content, as opposed to worrying about whether or not they accept a cookie or not. The precepts of the cookie was good, but as with anything else, there was actually nothing intrinsically wrong with a cookie. It's just public perception. It was like, we started talking about it. It became news. And sorry, Barry, I hadn't actually heard. Is that the latest conspiracy thing? As we got 5G injected into us with the vaccine? Is it?
Somebody was saying like you could get COVID from 5G back in the day, And
Oh no,
then,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that from last year.
sometimes being sarcastic, like now that you get the vaccine and it's being implanted in you, and then you get
Yeah, okay.
antibodies of COVID and 5G and whatever.
Because I'll tell you, here in Ireland, if we can actually get 5G anywhere closer, then we'd be injecting things. But it's just one of the fun things about our broadband in this country. No, it's just it's down to perception again, and it's going to be into it, that future thinking and going. And I like the concept of being able to have Google tell me what I want to know without realizing what I want to know. But yeah, then you start going down the conspiracy things. I believe it's going to be the anticipatory search is a good one to actually focus in on. That's what big data is leading us to for the forecasting anyway. So, predictive analysis. What are we going to need? What are we going to do? I still keep on going back to futuristic movies, and at some point that computer is just going to take over and realize it's better off without us.
So I think we're about out of time here, but I just want to end on sort of our main takeaway from the show. If there's one thing that you would suggest to people that they can come away from this half hour with, that they can do today that will help them accelerate their online business, what's that one thing?
One thing, get vaccinated. No, that's not a choice for a lot of people because they can't get it. The easy thing is structured data, rich results. It can really, even if you're in position, 5, and it will probably get you more clicks if you have those rich results on there. So structured data is a really great way to see a big bang for your buck without influencing directly rankings, but having a better click-through rate. But it really depends. Every site has their own thing. If you have structured data already, what's that one big thing for you? It really depends. If your homepage title tag says homepage, probably want to work on that first. If Google can't crawl your website, you probably want to work on that first. So everything is it depends, as John Mueller would say from Google.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on your current situation. It's not like one thing you have to do today. It depends on where you are.
Yeah.
But that's the key thing. The one thing is know where you are, I suppose, would be a good takeaway for that one. Get the data in, understand more, and understand where you can actually make the biggest impact. And the only way you're going to do that is to literally do an audit, get some data inside, and make decisions based on that.
Super. All right. Well, that's all that we have time for today. It's been an absolute pleasure, Barry. Randall, thank you for joining us. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
What a great chat we just had there with Barry Schwartz. We covered off Google getting rid of cookies and relying on first-party data, the pros and cons of featured snippets, and how SEO has changed over the years. For all the up-to-the-minute algorithm updates and feature releases on Google and Microsoft Search, make sure to follow Barry on Twitter with the handle @RustyBrick. And also be sure to check out the Rusty Brick YouTube channel for weekly updates, digests, search tips, and more. And thank you so much for joining us on Optily Radio, the podcast that's here to help you accelerate your e-commerce marketing success. If you enjoyed today's chat with Barry, please make sure to subscribe to our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and check out the videocast on Optily's YouTube channel. And join us again in 2 weeks, when we'll have Kirk Williams in to talk about some tips on Google Shopping versus Smart Shopping, structuring your sales funnel, and to talk about his book, Ponderings of a PPC Professional, which you should definitely check out beforehand. And don't forget to follow us on social media with the handle @OptilyGlobal, where you can leave your thoughts on the show and keep up to date with industry updates. And make sure to check out our site that's got tons of resources for running online ads and e-commerce marketing strategies at optily.com. Stay safe, and we'll catch you back here next time on Optily Radio.